The sun was sinking behind the wide valley hills, painting the sky in shades of soft gold and dusty orange. The air smelled of warm earth and dried grass, the kind of evening that made everything feel peaceful and slow. Ethan wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, his shirt stained with dust from a long day of mending fences and moving cattle to better pasture. He was a quiet man who lived alone on a modest ranch, the kind of man who spoke little but worked hard every single day. His hands were rough from labor, his boots worn from walking miles across unforgiving land. He didn't ask for much from life, just the simple rhythm of working his land and watching the seasons change. As he walked toward the barn to settle his horse for the night, he heard something strange. It was faint at first, almost like the wind playing tricks on his ears, but then it came again, a soft, pained sound that didn't belong to any animal he knew. Ethan stopped and listened carefully. The valley was usually quiet at this hour, except for the distant clucking of hens and the rustle of tall grass. He turned toward the fence line where the sound seemed to be coming from, his boots pressing down the dry earth as he moved closer. When he reached the wooden posts, his eyes fell on something that made his heart sink. A young woman stood there, gripping the fence post with one trembling hand, her legs unsteady beneath her. She was breathing hard, her face pale and twisted with pain. Ethan recognized her immediately. It was Mara, the daughter of a ranching family who lived a few miles across the valley. He had seen her in town a few times, always quiet, always helping her family with supplies or walking with her younger siblings. She was kind and hardworking, the type who never asked for attention or caused trouble. To see her alone out here, holding onto a fence like her life depended on it, sent a jolt of worry through him. "Mara, you all right?" he called out, his voice steady but filled with concern. She lifted her head slightly, her eyes barely open, filled with fear and exhaustion. She tried to speak, but the first attempt came out as nothing more than a shaky breath. When she finally managed to form words, her voice was barely above a whisper. "It hurts down there," she said, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. She looked away quickly, ashamed to even say the words out loud. Ethan didn't misunderstand her. He could see the real pain in her posture, the way her knees trembled like they might give out any second. This wasn't something she would say lightly. She was hurting badly, and she needed help. He took a slow step toward her, careful not to startle her. "What happened?" he asked gently. She shook her head, struggling to breathe normally. "I was helping my family move cattle. I slipped on a rock near some bushes. It hurt at first, but I thought I could walk it off. But it's getting worse." Ethan could see sweat on her forehead, even though the evening air had begun to cool. Her lips were pale, her hands trembling from the strain of keeping herself upright. She had probably tried to walk home alone after her family moved ahead, thinking the pain would fade. But it hadn't. It had only grown worse with every step. "How long have you been walking like this?" he asked. "A while," she whispered. "Too long." Her voice wavered, and Ethan saw her knees begin to bend as though she might collapse. He stepped forward quickly and caught her arm before she could fall. She didn't protest, only let out a shaky breath as his support steadied her. Up close, Ethan could see that her discomfort was real and worsening. She wasn't scared of him. She was scared of the pain she didn't understand. "Come on, let's get you sitting down," he said gently. He guided her a few steps to a patch of grass near the fence. Mara lowered herself slowly, breathing carefully through her nose as she tried to control the pain. Ethan knelt beside her, keeping a respectful distance, giving her space to gather herself. The sky shifted from orange to purple as the first stars began to appear. The valley felt calm, but the situation between them was anything but. "Can you tell me exactly where it hurts?" he asked softly. She hesitated, her eyes filled with embarrassment again, and she looked down at the ground. Ethan could tell she didn't want to say it, not because it was something wrong, but because she was shy and uncomfortable. She didn't want to make things awkward, but she was also in real pain, and she knew she needed help. "I think something poked me," she said quietly. "Maybe a thorn. I didn't look. I didn't want to look. It hurts every time I move." Ethan nodded. He had dealt with the land all his life. He knew the kinds of bushes and the dangers of leaving something sharp stuck in the skin. Some thorn bushes, especially mesquite, could drive deep under the skin. If a thorn broke off inside, it could cause swelling, infection, or worse. "Did you fall into one of those tall mesquite bushes near the creek line?" he asked. Her eyes widened slightly in recognition. "Yes," she whispered, "I think so." Ethan felt a tightening in his chest, not from fear but from concern. Those bushes were thick and dangerous. If she had fallen onto one at the wrong angle, a thorn could have gone deep. And if she had walked on it for miles, the problem could have grown serious. "Mara," he said carefully, "you need help. You shouldn't walk any further." She swallowed hard, trying to steady her breathing. "I didn't want to bother anyone," she whispered. "I thought I could get home. My dad and brothers went ahead with the cattle. They don't know I fell." "You're not bothering anyone," Ethan reassured her. "This is serious. You're hurting." She closed her eyes and Ethan could see a tear slip down her cheek, not from fear of him, but from the frustration of the situation. She hated feeling weak or helpless. She hated being stuck out here in pain. She hated needing help so badly that she couldn't hide it. Ethan's voice softened. "Look, you're safe here. I'm not going to ask anything wrong. I'm not going to do anything wrong. I just want to help you." She opened her eyes slowly and looked at him. There was worry in her gaze, but there was also trust. She knew Ethan wasn't the type to take advantage of someone's troubles. He had a reputation in the valley. Quiet, honest, respectful, always ready to help anyone who needed it. "I can't walk anymore," she said weakly. "I really can't." "I know," Ethan said softly. "You don't have to." He offered her his canteen. She took it with both hands and drank slowly, her hands shaking. Ethan could see she was exhausted from the long walk and the pain that had grown with every mile. "You said it hurts down there," he said in a careful tone. "I think you might have a thorn stuck deep. If that's true, it could be dangerous to leave it in." Mara looked down again, embarrassed but listening. "We need to know what's happening," Ethan continued gently. "If it's just a scratch, that's one thing. But if something is stuck inside the skin, it has to come out. You can get sick if it stays." She hesitated, then whispered, "I'm scared." "I know," Ethan replied softly. "But you're not alone. I'll help however I can. I promise." The quiet moment between them felt heavy, not with anything wrong, but with the seriousness of Mara's condition. Finally, Mara looked up at him again, her voice barely audible. "Can you check? I don't want to get worse." Quote. Her cheeks were pink with embarrassment, but her eyes were full of trust. Ethan nodded slowly, carefully, respectfully. "Only if you're comfortable with it," he said, "and only to make sure you're safe." Mara nodded once, trusting him because she had no choice. And because Ethan had already shown more gentleness and calmness than most people she knew. "Please help me," she whispered. Ethan reached into his saddlebag and took out a small bottle of alcohol. He poured it over his hands and rubbed them together until the scent filled the air. He didn't want to risk adding any germs to the wound. He spoke softly so she wouldn't panic. "I'm right here," he said. Mara nodded, but her breaths came quicker now. She was trying to prepare herself for whatever came next. Slowly, carefully, Ethan leaned closer to inspect the injury area. The moment his eyes focused, he saw enough to make him stop breathing for a second. A deep, angry swelling had formed on her upper thigh where the mesquite bushes were thick. The swelling was red and tight, clearly holding something beneath the skin. "Mara," he said gently, "you were right. Something is still inside." Her eyes opened wide with worry. "It is?" Quote. "Yes," Ethan said carefully. "I can see the swelling. The thorn is deep, too deep to leave alone." Mara let out a weak sob, not dramatic, just a small release of fear and relief mixed together. She wasn't imagining the pain. She wasn't overreacting. She was injured and she needed help. "What do we do?" she whispered. Ethan looked into her eyes with calm determination. "I'm going to have to remove it," he said. "Right here, right now. If we wait, it could get worse." Mara's breathing grew quick and uneven. Can you do it? Quote, Yes, Ethan said firmly. I've handled worse with animals and even helped with a neighbor once. I'll be gentle, I'll be careful, and I'll stop if you tell me to. She wiped her face, holding her handkerchief tightly. I trust you. Those 3 quiet words carried a weight Ethan never took lightly. He opened his pocket knife, not the blade, but the thin pointed tool used for lifting splinters. He cleaned it carefully with alcohol until it shone under the fading light. Tell me when you're ready, he said softly. Mara closed her eyes, took a shaky breath and whispered, I'm ready. Do what you have to. Ethan positioned the small tool just beside the dark speck that marked the thorn's entry. He took a slow breath, steadied his hand, and gently slid the tip of the tool under the edge of the skin. Mara's breath hitched, but she stayed still. Good, he whispered. Just breathe. He lifted gently, trying to raise the thorn enough to grab it without pushing it deeper. Mara let out a soft cry of pain, but Ethan stopped immediately. Do you want me to pause? He asked. She shook her head quickly, tears forming in her eyes. No, keep going. I just wasn't ready. All right, he said, his voice warm and encouraging. You're doing very well. He gave her a few seconds to breathe, then tried again. This time he moved even slower. After a moment, the thorn's edge appeared, just a tiny tip rising above the surface. Ethan felt a rush of relief. I see it, he murmured. It's coming up. Once the thorn tip had risen high enough, Ethan used his fingertips to grasp it gently. It was slippery, so he gripped it carefully, trying not to break it. This might sting, he warned softly. Okay, she whispered. Ethan pulled slowly, very slowly. He didn't want to tear the skin or cause the thorn to snap. Mara let out a long, trembling sound somewhere between a whimper and a breath. Her eyes squeezed shut and her shoulders shook. But she didn't move away. You're doing great, Ethan said, his tone full of calm strength. Almost there. Keep breathing. The thorn resisted at first, stuck deep inside. Ethan paused, letting Mara catch her breath again, then continued pulling with gentle pressure. The thorn finally began to slide upward. It wasn't a short thorn. It was surprisingly long, longer than he expected. Mara cried out softly, her body shaking. Ethan hated causing her pain, but it was the only way to help her. After what felt like an eternity, the thorn finally came free with a sudden release. Ethan held it between his fingers, shocked by its length. It was nearly as long as his thumb, dark, sharp, and covered with moisture from her skin. It's out, he said quietly. Mara opened her eyes slowly, her chest rising and falling in unsteady breaths. Is it really out? Quote. Yes, Ethan said, showing her the thorn. This was the problem. No wonder you were in so much pain. Her eyes widened in disbelief. The thorn looked larger than anything that should have come from a simple fall. She let out a weak laugh, half sob, half relief. That was inside me? Quote, most of it, Ethan confirmed. If you had kept walking, it could have caused a serious infection. Mara covered her face with both hands and cried, not loud, but soft tears of relief and exhaustion. Every moment of pain, embarrassment, and fear had built up inside her. And now that the thorn was out, everything came pouring out in quiet sobs. Ethan didn't touch her. He gave her the space to release her emotions, knowing she needed the moment more than anything. If you're enjoying this story of courage and kindness, please hit that like button. After a few minutes, her breathing slowed and she lowered her hands again. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know what would have happened if you weren't here. You would have made it somehow, Ethan said softly. You're strong. But I'm glad I was here to help. He took a clean cloth from his saddlebag, poured a little alcohol on it, and spoke gently. This might sting a bit. I need to clean the wound so it won't get infected. Mara braced herself and nodded. Do it, quote. He dabbed the cloth gently on the swollen area. Mara winced, but didn't pull away. Ethan worked slowly, wiping away any dirt or residue, making sure the skin was clean. He wrapped a soft bandage around her thigh, carefully securing it so it would protect the area without pressing too hard. When he finished, he took a step back, letting her relax. Mara leaned her head back, breathing deeply. "I feel lighter," she said softly. "Good," Ethan replied. "The worst part is over." She looked at him with eyes full of gratitude and something deeper, trust, admiration, and quiet shock at what he had done for her. "I can't believe you did all that," she whispered. Most people would have panicked. "Most people aren't out here every day fixing cattle injuries," Ethan said with a small smile. "This valley teaches you to stay calm." She gave a weak laugh. "Maybe I should learn from this valley too." Quote. Ethan glanced at the sky. Night had fully settled in. The stars glittered like tiny lanterns overhead. "We need to get you to the clinic," he said gently. "They'll check everything and make sure the swelling goes down properly." "Will I be able to ride?" she asked. "With my help, yes," Ethan said softly. He helped her stand slowly, supporting her without crowding her. Mara leaned on him only as much as she needed to, trusting his steady strength. For the first time since she arrived at the fence line, her steps did not shake with unbearable pain. The thorn was out. The danger was passing. And a quiet bond, unspoken but strong, had formed in the cool night air between a rancher and a young woman who had needed help more than she ever expected. Ethan helped Mara onto his horse with careful attention, making sure she was balanced and comfortable before he climbed up behind her. The ride to the clinic took nearly half an hour, but to Mara it felt shorter. She wasn't watching the time. She was listening to the sounds around her, soft hooves on the dirt, the rustle of wind through the grass, and the quiet ease in Ethan's breathing. She felt safe, protected, and strangely peaceful, despite everything she had gone through. As they approached the small clinic at the edge of town, a dim light shone through the windows. The doctor inside, an older man named Harper, looked up when he heard the horse outside. "Ethan, Mara, what are you two doing here this late?" he asked. "She had an accident," Ethan explained. "A mesquite thorn went deep into her thigh. I removed it, but she needs proper cleaning and maybe medicine." The doctor's eyebrows rose. "A thorn? Those can be nasty." He motioned them inside. "Bring her in." "Let me have a look." Ethan helped Mara onto a small examination bed while Dr. Harper washed his hands. The doctor examined the wound carefully. After a few moments, he looked up at Ethan, eyes wide. "You removed this yourself?" Quote. Ethan nodded quietly. "There wasn't time to wait. She couldn't walk." Dr. Harper shook his head in impressed disbelief. "You did it correctly. Most people would make it worse, trying something like that. You probably kept the swelling from spreading." Mara's eyes moved toward Ethan again, filled with gratitude. "I told you," she whispered softly to the doctor. "He saved me." Dr. Harper cleaned the wound with warm antiseptic water, applied a better bandage, and gave Mara a few tablets for pain and infection prevention. "The swelling will go down in a day or two," he said. "Just rest and drink water." "All right, thank you," Mara said. Before Ethan could ask about taking her home, the clinic door burst open, and her father strode in, followed by her older brothers. Their faces were full of worry. "Mara," her father shouted, "we heard someone brought you here. What happened?" Quote. Mara stiffened nervously, fearing she would be scolded for not calling them earlier. But Ethan stepped forward calmly. "She took a fall in the mesquite thorns," he explained. "A deep one. I found her near my fence line. She tried to walk home but couldn't make it." Quote. Her father looked at the bandage, his face softening instantly. "You should have called out, girl. We would have come back for you." Mara lowered her gaze. "I didn't want to slow everyone down." Her father sighed heavily. "You're more important than cattle. Don't ever think otherwise." Then he turned to Ethan, his eyes filled with something deeper. Respect, gratitude, and a quiet recognition of the seriousness of what Ethan had done. "I heard you helped her," he said. "I mean, really helped her." Ethan simply nodded, trying not to make it a big thing. Her father stepped forward and held out his hand. "Thank you," he said firmly. "You saved my daughter." Ethan shook the man's hand. "She's strong. She did most of the work." Mara smiled faintly at that, even hurt and exhausted. She appreciated his modesty. Drop a comment if this story touched your heart. We'd love to hear from you. Her father insisted on taking her home in their wagon, and Ethan helped her climb in safely. Once she was settled, she looked back at him with soft eyes. "I'll come by and thank you properly," she said quietly. "You already did," Ethan replied, with a small smile. Her father and brothers thanked Ethan again, then drove off into the night. Ethan stood there, watching the wagon roll away, feeling a strange warmth inside. A feeling that didn't come from pride, but from knowing he had done something meaningful, something that mattered to someone else in a deep way. The next morning, just as the sun painted the world with gold again, Ethan heard a gentle knock on his door. When he opened it, he found Mara standing there, leaning slightly on a walking stick, but smiling softly. Her father had dropped her off so she could speak to Ethan alone. "I wanted to come yesterday," she said, "but the doctor told me to rest. I couldn't rest without thanking you again." "You don't owe me anything," Ethan replied. "No," Mara said, shaking her head. "I do. You stayed calm when I was scared. You helped me when I thought no one was around. You didn't leave me, and you didn't make me feel small for needing help." Ethan felt something gentle settle in his chest. "You were brave," he said. Mara stepped closer, her eyes warm. "Brave doesn't mean you don't need someone. Sometimes it means trusting the right person." There, on his porch under the soft morning light, a new understanding formed between them. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and honest, just like the valley they both lived in. Over the following weeks, Mara visited Ethan's ranch often, bringing small gifts from her family: fresh bread, jars of preserves, bundles of herbs. Each visit stretched a little longer. They would sit on the porch and talk about the valley, about life, about dreams they never thought to share with anyone else. Ethan found himself looking forward to her visits more than he expected, and Mara found in Ethan something she had never known she needed: a man who listened without judgment, who helped without asking for anything in return, who made her feel seen and valued. One evening, as the sun set in that same golden glow that had marked the night they met, Mara stood beside Ethan near the fence line where he had first found her. She looked out at the valley, then turned to him with a soft smile. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to think I had to be strong all by myself. That needing help meant I was weak." Ethan looked at her, his eyes gentle. "And now?" Quote, "Now I know that real strength is trusting someone enough to let them help you," she said. "You taught me that." Ethan reached out and took her hand, his touch warm and steady. "You taught me something too," he said. "That sometimes the most important thing you can do is just be there when someone needs you." Mara's eyes shimmered with emotion. "Will you keep being there?" she whispered. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "Always," he said, "for as long as you'll let me." Quote, under the wide open sky, with the valley stretching endlessly around them, two souls who had found each other in a moment of pain and trust made a quiet promise. It wasn't spoken with grand words or dramatic gestures. It was spoken in the way they stood together, hands joined, hearts steady, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it side by side. Subscribe for more emotional Wild West tales that will warm your heart and remind you of the power of kindness. Mara wouldn't forget what Ethan had done, and Ethan wouldn't forget the trust she gave him in a moment of fear and pain. Sometimes one act of help became the beginning of something stronger than either person expected. And for Ethan and Mara, this was only the beginning of a love built on trust, respect, and the quiet courage of two people who learned that being vulnerable didn't make them weak. It made them human. It made them real. And it made them ready for a lifetime, together in the valley they both called home.